My name is Amara and I am 36 years old. I live in Nairobi, a vibrant city that pulses with life and energy, but also one that faces many challenges I have seen firsthand every single day. My small laboratory, tucked away on the edge of the university campus, became my sanctuary, a place where late-night experiments hummed with possibility while the city outside slept. I am a scientist, and for as long as I can remember, my hands have been drawn to solving puzzles, my mind to understanding how things work, and my heart to making a difference. I saw the struggles of my community, the families living just a short walk from my lab, struggling with access to clean, safe drinking water. It was a quiet struggle for many, an unseen burden that weighed heavily on my soul. I would walk through the market, past the smiling faces, but my eyes would catch the subtle signs. The worried looks of mothers, the slight tremor in a child's hand, the general fatigue that comes from constantly fighting illness caused by contaminated water. My dream, my driving force, was simple yet profound. To give my people, my community, the fundamental right of clean water. It felt like a monumental task, a mountain too tall to climb for just one person. That was my internal nemesis, the nagging voice of doubt that whispered in my ear, telling me I was too small, too ordinary, too under-resourced to tackle such a colossal problem. The thought that children were falling sick, missing school, and even worse, succumbing to preventable diseases, simply because their water was unsafe, fueled my determination and kept me awake many nights. I spent my days analyzing water samples from various parts of the city, from the bustling center to the more informal settlements on the outskirts. The results were often heartbreaking, showing dangerous levels of bacteria and other contaminants. I knew I couldn't just stand by. I had to find a solution, a cheap, effective, and easily reproducible water filter that anyone could use, a filter that could turn murky, dangerous water into life-giving purity. I poured every waking hour and every spare shilling into my research. My small lab became a world of beakers, tubes, and endless cups of strong coffee. There were countless false starts. I tried different combinations of natural materials, testing various types of charcoal, sand, and fabrics. Each failed experiment was a blow, a tiny chip at my confidence, making that internal nemesis, the doubt, grow louder. There were moments when I'd stare at a cloudy water sample, one that had passed through my latest filtration attempt, still looking just as contaminated, and I'd feel a wave of despair wash over me. I remember one particular afternoon when I had worked for weeks on a new design, convinced it was the breakthrough I needed. I carefully assembled the layers, poured in the dirty water, and waited with bated breath. The water that emerged was still hazy, the test results confirming it was far from safe. I sank into my chair, my head in my hands, feeling utterly defeated. It felt like I was running in place, getting nowhere. Resources were tight, funding was almost non-existent, and the skepticism from some of my peers was palpable. They would politely suggest I focus on more practical, research that could attract bigger grants, but their words only strengthened my resolve. I wasn't doing this for grants, I was doing it for life itself. After nearly 2 years of relentless work, failures, and tiny, incremental successes, it happened. I had experimented with a new composite material, something I had overlooked before, and after refining the process, the results were astonishing. The water flowing through my prototype was crystal clear. The laboratory tests confirmed it, 99.9% of contaminants removed. It was simple, durable, and most importantly, incredibly inexpensive to produce. I held the small, unassuming filter in my hands, tears welling up in my eyes. This was it. This was the answer. This could change everything. The joy was overwhelming, a pure, unadulterated happiness I had never felt before. I immediately began planning how to share it, how to get it into every home that needed it, how to teach communities to make their own. My heart swelled with hope. But just as I started to outline my plans for widespread distribution, a representative from a massive global corporation contacted me. They had heard whispers of my breakthrough, their scouts always on the lookout for promising innovations. They flew to Nairobi, met with me in my lab, and offered me an astronomical sum of money to buy the patent for my filter, to own the rights to my invention. They talked about exclusive global distribution, about putting my name on a product that would make millions, possibly billions. They promised me financial security beyond my wildest dreams, enough to live a life of luxury, to never worry about money again. It was an offer that would solve every single one of my personal financial struggles. The offer hung in the air, heavy and tempting. I saw myself, debt-free, able to fund my own research without begging for grants, able to provide for my family back in the village. It was a future free from the constant strain of making ends meet. But then I saw the catch. They intended to market the filter at a price point that would still be out of reach for the very communities I had dedicated my life to helping, the communities in Nairobi, and countless others across the continent. They wanted to turn clean water into a luxury commodity. The internal battle was fierce, a raging storm inside me. My internal nemesis, the doubt, came back with a vengeance, but this time it was intertwined with guilt. Was I being foolish to turn down such an opportunity? Could I truly sacrifice my own future for an ideal? I spent sleepless nights staring at the ceiling, the corporate offer flashing through my mind like a neon sign, juxtaposed with the images of children with distended bellies, the exhausted faces of mothers carrying jerry cans of polluted water. I walked through the market, watching a small boy fill a plastic bottle from a communal tap, the water visibly cloudy. He looked up at me and smiled, a pure, innocent smile, and in that moment, the storm inside me began to quiet. I remembered why I started, why I endured all the failures, all the sleepless nights. It was for that smile, for that child's future. It was for the promise of life, not profit. I stood in my lab, the corporate contract lying unsigned on my desk, the air thick with the weight of my decision. I picked up one of my filters, a simple device, yet within it lay the power to transform lives. I thought of my grandmother, who always said that true wealth lay not in what you owned, but in what you gave. Then, as if guided by an unseen hand, my phone buzzed. It was a message from a small, local community center I had volunteered at years ago, asking if I could give a talk on water safety. A talk. It was a tiny request, but it was from the heart of my community, a place where people simply needed help, not a commodity. That small, unassuming message was the final push. It wasn't a stranger giving me money, but a stranger reminding me of my purpose. It was my final burst of internal resilience, a surge of clarity that swept away all doubt. I took a deep breath, and with a firm resolve, I typed out an email to the corporate executives. Thank you for your generous offer, but my invention is not for sale. It belongs to the world. It was a leap of faith, a commitment to my deepest values, knowing I might face financial struggles again, but also knowing I had made the right choice. The following months were a whirlwind of activity, but this time it was a joyful one. I released my filter design to the public, offering it freely to anyone who wanted to use it. I started small, setting up workshops in local community centers, teaching people how to build the filters themselves using readily available, inexpensive materials. The response was overwhelming. Mothers, fathers, students, and elders all came, eager to learn. We gathered empty plastic bottles, discarded fabrics, and sand, transforming them into life-saving devices. I saw the relief in their eyes, the understanding dawning as they watched dirty water become clean before their very eyes. My new normal was not one of luxury, but one of purpose and connection. My lab became a hub of community activity, a place where knowledge was shared freely, and hope flowed like the clean water from our filters. Children who were once frequently sick were now thriving, their laughter echoing through the narrow streets. Schools saw improved attendance because fewer children were ill. The local clinics reported a dramatic decrease in waterborne diseases. My story spread, not through corporate advertising, but through word of mouth, through the sheer power of human connection. Non-governmental organizations reached out, offering support in scaling our workshops and distribution. Volunteers joined our cause, dedicating their time and energy to spreading the knowledge even further. I was no longer fighting alone. I was part of a growing movement, a ripple effect that started with a single decision. One day, I received a letter, handwritten and smudged, from a remote village far from Nairobi. It was from a woman who had heard about our filters through a friend, had followed the instructions we posted online, and had built one for her family. She wrote that her youngest child, who had been constantly battling illness, was now strong and healthy, able to play and learn. She thanked me, a stranger, for giving her child a future. That letter, more than any monetary offer, was my true reward. It proved that sometimes, the greatest wealth is not what we accumulate, but what we generously give away. It taught me that even the smallest act of kindness, the simplest invention born of love, can create a ripple that travels further than we can ever imagine. proving that things truly do get better when we choose hope and connection over everything else.